Hi there, and welcome to Master of Horror, where I give you the scariest, true, paranormal stories that I've ever come by.
True paranormal scary story number 1, the entities on the roof.
12 years ago, when I was 20, I had been married for 2 years and had 2 kids. I was a stay-at-home mom, and my husband worked as a landscaper. We lived in a double-wide trailer. One night, I was at home alone because the kids were visiting their grandparents, and I decided to relax and watch a movie. Our home was about a mile away from the nearest neighbor's house. It rested atop a large hill that was surrounded by dense forest. I had barely started the movie when I heard what sounded like a kitten meowing outside. I got up and decided to investigate. I went outside and immediately noticed something wasn't right. The meowing sounded like it was coming from about 20 feet up in a large oak tree. When I walked over and stood directly underneath the branches, the meowing turned into a deep growling, not like a dog, but someone pretending to be a dog. It was too dark out to see anything clearly. I was beginning to get scared, and that's when I decided to go back inside and lock the door. While I contemplated whether or not I would be overreacting by calling the police, that's when I heard a loud boom on my roof, followed by the most insane, high-pitched scream I had ever heard. I covered my eyes and ran to the bedroom and grabbed the shotgun. I was shaking with fear because I knew something or someone was trying to scare me, and this whole ordeal wasn't normal. You could just feel that it was something different. I called my husband at work, and just as he answered, the noises started again, only deeper and longer. He told me to hang up and call the police, but I knew they wouldn't be out there for at least another hour or two. So instead, I decided to stand facing the window with the shotgun. After a few moments, what looked like a dark shadow-like entity jumped down in front of the window facing me. It had complete red glowing eyes. After staring at me for a few seconds, it then growled. I was in disbelief at what I was looking at, and just then, I heard another sound on top of the roof. And just like the first one, another dark entity jumped down off the roof, staring right at me. It was standing right next to the first entity. Instinctively, I cocked back the hammer on the shotgun. I didn't want to shoot through the window if I could help it, but I wasn't going to let them get into my house. It looked like they pressed their faces to the window, and all I could think about was how silent it was, and all of a sudden how pulling the trigger would break the silence. I'm not sure how long we locked eyes, but I suddenly noticed a pair of headlights coming up the driveway. I recognized my husband's car. I wanted to scream out for him not to get out of the car, but before I could even open my mouth, both black entities jumped back onto the roof and into the darkness. My husband never caught a glimpse of them, and ultimately didn't believe me, but his mother did and confided in me that she had seen them before. She believed that they were some kind of demon-like entity. Over the next few years, before we moved away, I would occasionally hear meowing from the trees and around my house at night, but I would never go out to investigate, not after what happened the last time. I'm not sure what they were, but paranormal or not, I don't ever want to find out what they wanted from me.
True, scary, paranormal story number 2, the woman in white.
When I was 7, we lived in a very old and completely empty house without furniture or even bathrooms. If you had to go to the restroom, you needed to leave the house, and you'd had to go outside and use the outhouse. An outhouse was a restroom that was outside, and they used to make those back in the day. This outhouse had a very heavy rusty door that never wanted to open easily. One night, I was sleeping upstairs, but I heard something in the kitchen beneath me. Assuming it was my parents, I went downstairs thinking they might share a snack with me, but to my surprise, there was no one there, and nobody had passed me to go back upstairs. Since I was already downstairs, I decided to go outside to the bathroom. For some reason, I wasn't afraid, given the circumstances. I opened the squeaky door and did my business, and shoved the heavy door back open again, intending to head back to bed. I looked up at the house and noticed, through the window on the ground floor, a woman in white. And when the outhouse door slammed shut behind me, she turned and made eye contact with me. I stood dead frozen, staring dumbfounded back at her. Suddenly, terrified that I had no idea who this woman was, I closed my eyes and waited for a moment, and when I opened my eyes again, she was gone. I sprinted back into the house, the long way, just to avoid the room that she had been standing in. I ran upstairs and huddled terrified in my room until I fell asleep again. I never told anyone what I saw. Now fast forward to when I was 10 years old and living in another house. I shared a bedroom with my 2 brothers, and my sister slept in the room across the hall. I woke up around 2 o'clock in the morning because I heard the sound of footsteps across the hall, walking over to the glass panel door on my sister's side. I saw a small girl who I assumed to be my sister. She was dressed in all white and pressing herself against the panel from inside my sister's room, and she was staring right back at me. I opened my door and asked her if everything was all right, but being able to see her much clearly now that there was only one panel of glass between us, I realized with a sinking feeling in my stomach that it definitely wasn't my sister. The girl didn't answer as she stared back at me with eyes that seemed entirely too wide and dark. I slammed my door shut and leapt back into my bed. It took me hours before I fell back to sleep. I didn't tell anyone about what I saw. The last incident was last year. When I was 17 years old, I was playing football for my high school at the time. I was sleeping in my own room and was awoken by a muttering sound from outside my door. I thought it was my mother, but what really disturbed me was that the voice was chanting something extremely rapid in another language that definitely wasn't English. And my mother doesn't speak any other languages other than English. Part of me really wanted to get back up and open the door, but I felt a chill. Then the voice completely stopped and I found myself unable to move. I don't know how long I was paralyzed, but it was not until the sun began to rise that I felt I was able to move again on my own. I have no idea if it's the same entity that's been haunting me. If anyone knows or has any suggestions, please let me know.